Hey everyone, this is Zee Kelly today, and we are hanging out talking all things epic fantasy. And I am going to throw this over to my buddy and let her introduce herself because I can never say your name right. So uh, I'm not even going to try this time. You do it. So this
It's
is,
Therena.
say it one more time.
Therena.
Oh, yeah. See, I can't get it right. I crucified names. So, anyway, we are going to talk to
Therena.
about her art and her books and all things creative because she's amazing. I mean, just amazeballs. When I saw your art, I was just like blown away. It was just so cool. So, let's talk about a little bit about where you grew up because I think that has a lot of influences on your life. And I want to talk about where you're living now. And yeah, let's just talk a little bit more about you and get to know you a little bit better.
Sure, sounds good. So I'm born and raised in South Africa. I grew up there till I was 13, and then we immigrated to Canada up in northern BC for a huge cultural shock from plus 40 to minus 40, quite literally within a matter of 3 days.
Yes.
And so I grew up there in northern Canada, went to school, university in Edmonton in Alberta, and then now I live on Vancouver Island, which is like tropical Canada, and it's paradise. It's like the most beautiful place in Canada. It
I
is.
love it. So let's talk about minus 40 and plus 40. That's what, 100 and 100
Oh,
degrees?
that's Celsius. I don't even know what that is in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I think that's
That's it.
about 90 98.
So I think minus 40 Celsius is minus 40 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, but plus
And
40
plus
is not the
40,
same.
no, plus
No.
40 is probably actually the same ish, maybe. I don't know. It's
Because
like super hot.
you double it and add 23. So yeah, it's really
It's
hot.
ridiculous.
Let's just call it hot
It's like the
because
desert. Like,
yeah,
like a heat
it's hot.
wave when you feel you're gonna melt.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Vancouver Island, for anybody that hasn't been there, is amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, with the big forests
And
and
the ocean.
rivers and the ocean and the whales and the
Yeah.
bears and the moose and yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's
The eagles, backyard deer.
Oh, the Eagles. I mean, I was on
Yeah.
Campbell River and saw the Eagles coming in. My
Yeah.
husband's Canadian, by the way. So I've been up there a little bit.
Yeah.
So how has that movement from South Africa influenced you as the adult you are today?
So I think probably a lot of people who have moved a lot as a child, because my dad was in the army, so we always moved around, but then also changing cultures, like where, because I didn't speak English when I came to Canada. And so, like there's a big culture shock of now I have to communicate in a different language. People don't think the way you think, like schools are different. So you always feel like that fish out of water. You never quite fit in. You're always that exotic person that doesn't fit in. You're different. You're not one of us, right? And you're what do you call it? I don't know,
Outcast? Do you feel like did you
yeah,
feel like an outcast a little bit?
like
I mean, because
100%.
like me,
Yes.
I
Yes.
that rolling R in your name,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
or mm, for those who don't know,
Yeah.
I tried for 15 minutes to
I did. Yeah.
get your
Yeah.
name right, and it's just not really easy for
Yeah.
for people that you're entering this country and they can't even say your name right.
Oh, and like when you think identity as far as names, which actually comes in my books when I name my characters, I do a lot of research on naming and name meanings. And I mean, I don't focus so much on pronunciation because I'm sure I mispronounce it, but I do go into depth with meanings. But coming and not like your name's your identity. And when
Right.
people can't even say that, you lose so much of, well, and especially like as a teenager, like at 13, you're trying to discover yourself as a person anyways. And now you don't even have the one thing that's been steady your whole life.
That's been given to you, right?
Yeah, that's been given to you, right? So losing that ability, so you're struggling with yourself and fitting in and finding yourself, but you're also struggling with just learning new cultures and what's acceptable, and saying words, because down south we'll say, for example, like in the classroom I asked, can I have a rubber? Well, in South
Uh,
African English, that's an eraser. In Canadian English, that's a condom.
yes,
So,
that's
little language
hard.
things like that, right? Like, and as a teenager, that was like mortifying, asking that out loud. Like the kids
Mortifying.
burst out laughing. And
But you're not the only one that does. I had a
oh no,
boss that did the same thing. She immigrated
yeah,
from England and she
yeah,
said, but she did it in the middle of a test when everybody was completely quiet.
yeah,
And
yeah.
she said it scarred her for life. So
Oh yeah,
we're
yeah.
all scarred, right?
I think
Right?
so. Yeah,
From that. And
yeah.
so, at 13, if we all think about going back to that age of 13 and immigrating, and yeah, I just think how strong you must be in yourself, right? And thinking about that. So, does that stubbornness and that strength of heart come out in everything that you do now? I mean, was that pivotal moment that said, "Hey, I just need to be who I am"?
I, I think it took me many years, but yes, stubbornness is probably my number one who I am. You can just put it like as my middle name as stubbornness. Um, but yeah, definitely like building up the resilience of trying to figure out where do I belong, and then eventually getting to a point, well, who am I? Like, am I Canadian or am I South African? Because I'm neither,
Right.
right? Because at that age, you're influenced by both, but you're not fully both. And even now, I still can't really identify. So one of the things when I write is I write a lot of half breeds, people who are born between two worlds. I like, the main character of my first book was half angel, half demon, which is as opposite as you can get for that reason. But that's because in a lot of ways, she's that symbolism of me of, well, two worlds coming together, but how? Right? And what does she then make of it? Where does she fit in and belong? So another very big underlying theme in all my novels, especially, is found family, right? Finding that place where you belong and who you belong with.
Yeah, because one of the things that's very passionate about me is I don't like boxes. I don't like to have to tick that I'm a white female with this age with,
Yeah,
society makes you tick boxes. They smush you into this little square box and make you
yeah,
be a box. And I don't like to be a
no,
box. So it makes me feel like we resonate together that, I'm not this and I'm not that. And I'm more than this, some of
yeah,
my little boxes that society makes me tick. And so it's
yeah.
very fascinating to me that, you're mixing angels and demons and a mashup. And how cool is that? Was it hard to write that, or did it just flow naturally because
It flew net.
you've
I
lived
live
that
that.
world?
I live that world, like writing the outcast and writing, the people that are on the fringes of society, the weird ones, you know, it's just like writing about myself, right? I know what it's like. I know what they feel. I know what they go through and the prejudices they face, right? So, yeah, that wasn't a challenge at all trying to bring that into my books.
So let's talk about that series. And
Yeah.
because I think it's really cool about how a series develops and where the idea came from and how it just evolved. Now, I know you do art. So was it
Mhm.
your art that spurred, is it the chicken and the egg? The art that spurred the books or the books that spurred the art? Which way did it go?
In this case, actually, so I've written other stories and journals because I hadn't read my books, and that was too overwhelming because there was like 12 or 14 journals filled. They're on my shelf here that one day I'll finish. And I'm like, oh, I'll write a quick short story. And at the time I was playing D&D with my family, and I made a character that was half angel and demon. And I actually fell in love with her backstory. So I guess in some ways the art, because I drew a sketch of the character, and I don't know, I can actually show it here, but like that was the character sketch that then inspired the whole character and the story
Now we
behind.
just have to wait on that. You got to show that again because
Okay.
that
Hold on.
is amazing. You guys have to see this art because it is truly amazing.
Yeah.
So
Hold
look
on.
at that. That's
Yeah.
from a game of D&D. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I
Look at
mean, she
this
was a
artwork,
sketch,
folks.
but yeah. So the art
They,
actually inspired the book, and then they kind of go back and forth. Sometimes, like, because I have a lot of art in my books as well. Um, like especially like the new book, I drew a picture. I'm like, oh, well, this would be a really cool scene, and actually introduced a whole new character and a whole scene and a whole plot tangent. So it goes both ways.
so when
Sometimes,
you're doing the art, does that just sort of solidify that character for you? Is that part of a process that you're going through? Because a lot authors go through a lot to develop a character. And
yeah,
some of us write out lists like what's in the refrigerator, what's under the bed. For you, it seems like your
visual.
design of that character is that foundation.
Yeah,
Is that what I'm
yeah,
hearing?
yeah, absolutely. Like with Evie, like I built her based on a D&D character, so I had some influence in that in sense of, okay, well, this is what kind of, I mean, she completely diverted from that, but I kind of had built her initial visual based on that. And then, but yeah, like I will draw a character and I will see, okay, this is what they look. And as I'm drawing, I actually tell myself stories. So it's
Nice.
like the characters start talking to me. It's like, yeah, this is who I am as a person. This is my personality. These are events I face. And, like it just kind of snowballs from there.
So let's talk about that character
Yeah.
diverting from what you thought. So the characters talk to you. I'm assuming you probably started out plotting your book and your character went sideways. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I don't plot. I'm a pantser.
Okay.
I or a discovery writer, as some people call them, which I think is way cooler than pantser because I don't get pantser, but so I'm a discovery writer. It's literally like reading a story. Like one thing I write the book front to back. I don't jump all over the place. So I'm literally like things just start happening. It's like, okay, well, this character, her name's Evie, so she is half angel, half demon. Well, then I had to ask a question, well, how did this even happen? Because even like in our world, angels and demons aren't necessarily best of buddies.
Right.
So there's, a lot of, for me, symbolism in that. Okay, well, they don't really mix, but what could have forced this union? Like what was it a good union? What drove that? And then so that's kind of where I really started fleshing her out as a character. Okay, well, and then like it's fantasies, so the whole, being abandoned, right?
Yeah.
Because there's the orphan, but not the orphan. I don't want to like give everything, but so essentially she's then separated from these two because both sides would essentially kill her or want her dead.
Oh, nice
So
conflict. So she can't be either because they'll both
no,
kill her. Nice
yeah,
conflict. Yeah.
and I think that kind of probably stems with the whole immigration thing. It's like, well, I can't say I'm fully Canadian because I'm not,
Right.
right? I can't say I'm fully South African because I'm not. So where does that put me, right? I can't
The
claim
middle.
either, right? So that's where my influence of me comes into her. For I make my characters suffer, so I feel sorry for her.
Yeah, we do
But
that. We
yeah,
we we torture our characters to death. So one
yeah.
of the other things, so we've talked about Evie. Is there another character in your books that you really resonate, that really brings out maybe a mirror image of Evie that resonates with you, that sort of pops out as somebody that's a different side of your personality?
Um, well, hmm, probably you don't meet her until book two, but her name's Nisha, and she's a side character that gets introduced then, and she's like the inner voice I wish I could say out loud. Right? She's my real thoughts. She's like, I wish I could have her sass and her confidence and her she's gone through a lot in her backstory, but you know what? She owns it. And she owns who she is as a person and what's been done to her, but at the same time, she doesn't let that stop her. She still has her goals and she goes for them. She fights for what she wants and dreams for. So she's like the little quiet voice that I hear, but nobody else will hear.
Nice. Nice. I love that. I love that because there's always something that we wish we could say out loud, right?
Yeah.
And
And she says it, and
I
she's
even
like,
have one of those Yellowstone t-shirts that says I want to be Beth Dutton one day.
yeah,
No, I don't know if you know that
I don't.
TV series, but she is, there are some things that she says out loud that it's like, ooh, okay,
Yes, yeah,
that's
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I'm like, man, you can get away with that.
Yeah,
But
can you really get away with that? And she does. She pulls it
yeah,
off
yeah,
brilliantly. That character,
yeah.
and that is another thing about characterism. She plays
Yeah.
a character on television that we as authors can do things that
Yeah.
are quite fun. You know,
Well, and it's funny, like if you look even like the evolution of Edie between book one and book two, because one of the underlying things, like when I started writing her as an artist, was when I finally decided, okay, I'm going to write a book and publish it. I'm going to pursue my career as an illustrator more seriously because I had to put photography on a back burner due to COVID. And then, but like Evie in the beginning, she's very much a reflection of myself and my own naivety, my own insecurities, my own fears, self doubt. So she very heavily has that. But then as I started writing and I started like now with book two, she actually grows into the same confidence that I am with like realizing, just because I can't say this out loud doesn't mean my characters can't say this out loud. And it was like this huge aha moment, like, yeah, I can write that. Like I don't have it was actually really like a liberating thing. It's like, I can say what I really want to say, and
I
my
can
character
say
can do
that.
it.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
another thing is that they say, often I had an editor that I pulled back on a scene really hard because I was like, oh, I can't say it
Yeah.
or something like that. And she's like, yeah. And she said, you're writing with fear.
Yeah.
You're writing in fear.
Yeah.
You're writing what people will think. And she
Yeah.
said, you need to go back and write the scene the way it should be written. And
Yeah.
you know what? It was really amazing. And I think that you're going to find this out as
Yeah.
well because is book two out? I'm not sure. Book two, you're
Book two is in backer kit right now. So
okay. But
yeah.
yeah. So, but anyway, when that book came out,
Yeah.
everyone's favorite scene
It
was
was that
that
one.
scene that I rewrote
Yeah.
because I pushed it hard. And
Yeah.
so that is true that we can really push hard on some certain
Yeah.
scenes and really get it out there.
Yeah.
So, and that leads me to research. We do a ton of research. So help help us understand what type of research you did for this series and what you found most fascinating. Because we always
Um,
find little
yeah.
fascinating nuggets here and there.
I find names fascinating, honestly. Like for me, and it's funny because like my characters will either name themselves. Like I personally would never have picked Evie as a name, but because it's so simple, and I actually like those,
Complex
weird
names that I can't
complex
say.
names. Yes, yeah. So the fact that the main character is Evie and Cain actually kind of comes back down to the whole, the angel demon thing. And so when I went with the naming system, I went with a lot of, like your historical sort of angel names, things that sound to us in our world similar to, what an angel name would sound like or what a demon name would sound like. And Evie kind of being the first, even just like, from the Bible kind of perspective, but more just that whole, the first thing. So I did a lot of research on name meanings. So sometimes I'll have a role in a character and be like, okay, well, this is their role. And I'll actually go Google like name meanings with that role. And then whichever one just sounds right, that's the name. And like this was all done sort of subconsciously initially. And I didn't realize that until I had named all the characters in my book, that this is where, the source inspiration. And depending on my different series, like my second book that's a standalone was about dragons, and I just had this name Ryu in my mind, which turns out means literally dragon. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. So like I love name meanings, so for me that's fascinating. I do a lot of research on kind of the era that I like drawing inspiration from. It's like ancient Rome, like the ancient civilizations. So I do a lot of research on technology and like how did they get water to their house? How did they do the aqueducts? What did they use for toilets and wars back then? Right? Like silly things you'd never think about. So things like that. I do a lot of research. What armor pieces are called, different like fighting movements. There's a lot of sword fights, a lot of magic in my books, a lot of epic battles. So doing a lot of research, even like watching movies. So I probably rewatched Lord of the Rings many times because of this book, or other fantasy movies where I knew there were like, if I know I'm going to write a big epic battle scene, I will go and watch a movie with big epic battle scenes, and I will analyze and say, okay, well, this kind of like, how would I write this? And so there's a lot of visual research as well as Google research for that.
You will laugh at me because my husband's sort of special forces military, and came home one day, and I had purchased from Amazon all those little plastic soldiers, and I had rocks, and I had little soldiers, and I had them like I had drawn a river, and I had, and I'm like, I can't get my fight scene, my battle scene to work, and he came in and he solved it in like 5 minutes. Because I didn't have that battle ready mindset, of how battles should be, fun. So now I just get my little plastic guys out and lay them on the table, and I have my husband help me with movement and how this is, battling it out, because I'm like, I'm a dork when it comes to battling. But that's what, I mean, you do what works, right? I mean, you got to have all these now. This person, if I take that one out, how does this shift? And if I try to hold these people off, how is that going to work? And, and people are like, do you really spend that much time thinking about this stuff? And you're like, I mean, how many hours did you spend thinking about names and settings? And, I can't, like, I did research on whether I thought, it'd be really cool if I had 2 moons. But then I started thinking about gravity, and this side of the earth has to be cold, and that is over hot. And how is that? I was like, oh.
Well, it's funny you say that, because my world essentially has 2 moons. Right? And I've finally, because the whole science was breaking it for me, like, because the whole tri-body problem kind of thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to create an event that will make this work. And so I did. And I wrote it. And now there's magic, and there's gods and goddesses and all. So, but because of that, it's literally power that's holding it together, not just gravity.
Well, and you have to think about that, because somebody's going to call you out.
It's like, scientifically, this doesn't work. I'm like,
like, we're going to call you out on it. Yeah. And I've actually had I write awesome in another name, and I've had readers call me out on a few things, but I always keep my links, my research links, and then I can share my research links, which I think is awesome, because then I've learned something and I can share them with my readers that, hey, did you know that, whatever. And exactly. It's really fun, because I'm always blown away. People think, probably like you, that we're these people with a whole bunch of little bits of irrelevant stuff in our brains, because we're great at Trivial Pursuit, right?
I'm not. I'm like,
you're
on
not.
The spot. No, I suck at on the spot stuff.
Oh yeah, well,
I'm like,
there you go. I have to think about it too. So
it takes me a book to say one thing.
So what else about your world building do you think is really cool?
Well, so I mentioned the other stories that I wrote before. And as I finished this book, I also then wrote some other stories that haven't been published yet. And I realized that it's very much like a Marvel universe. And I have like all these historical events that I can kind of pull from. And it was kind of really neat realizing that all my books are written in the same world, but on one of each of the different moons. And so I really like the magic systems.
Now, are the magic systems the same across all moons and planets? And
yes and no. Okay. I do really like sort of using the the characters' perspective and their beliefs to explain how they feel it comes from. Yes, there's the same source or the same sort of underlying fuel, I suppose, power source for the magic. But I like the fact because like even us as humans, like depending on where you come from, you're gonna see they interpret it this way, or they're gonna say, oh, it's always from the gods, or they're gonna say it's always from, whatever. And I like drawing on those things from my different books because they're all going to be from different cultures within my world, and they're all going to have their own sort of. I love lore and mythology. Like I grew up when, as a teenager, I would hide in the library and go through the Greek mythology books and just like devour it. And, so I really like bringing out that sort of cultural element into my books for things like, okay, well, she's a blood mage, but where does it actually come from? But what do people believe about it?
But
And
do you have false beliefs? Like I have false beliefs where
yes,
I'm like, this is myth and it's false belief and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden
it's
there's a
revealed.
point that it's like, oh my God,
Yes.
it's not myth, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
fun to do that twist where, oops, I thought
And
it was myth, or I thought it was a song, or I thought it was a
yeah.
whatever, because history is even written by,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
yeah, the victor.
opinions and biases and whatever like that. And so it's nice
Yeah.
to
Book
play
two.
with those
I do play
biases.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you do
Like
that too?
my second book, so book one kind of lays out the world and brings you into like this is where my characters are. And she does travel sort of between realms. But so she kind of has her own beliefs of this is what things are believed. But even the side characters will come in with their this is what I believe to be true. But then book two came along and things I thought was true.
Oh,
And
Sarah.
I'm like, what the hell? Like a character that I was like, this is definitely like a straight, narrow character. Like she's like, she's the person. Turns out maybe she's not, right? There's depth there that suddenly I'm like, where the hell did that come from? And then like, who knows about this? Who doesn't know about it? Right? As the different players come in and sort of reveal these other facets of what is true and what is belief and what is, accepted.
So how did you talked about moving between realms, right?
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated to understand how you develop the rules, because there's got to be rules between moving. Who can move between realms, and how did you develop that?
So there's multiple ways that I'm aware of because I'm learning new ways, of course, as like I said, I'm a discovery author.
Yes.
So the one way is some characters have the innate ability to teleport. They're called realm walkers. They can walk between the different realms. But they can't transport a person from one realm. They can do it on the same realm. They can take someone with them, but they can't do from because and it's actually something I address where it affects like it's just so much for a person's intelligent brain, like as an adult, to just conceptualize and do that they actually tend to go crazy if they were to take that person with them. So
Okay.
that's the one way. Another way is there's actually gates, which does negate that, where you
Okay.
these and that's what kind of where the war between the angels and demons occur because they're protecting these big, basically like a Stargate, where
Yeah.
you can step between the different areas using codes and keys. So that's actually the biggest way that people generally do. Now Evie is a sailor. She and then she gets tasked by a goddess to go to another realm, and the goddess then gives her because she's really connected to the stars and the cosmos, and there's a third, much less traveled one, and that's the river Styx. So I kind of went with the mythology of like the river Styx connecting like different realms, but it literally will jump dimensions. It will jump timelines. And you have to stay on course or you will get lost in the time space continuum wherever you are. So she's given a magical map by the goddess and then said, okay, well, this is your course. That's how you're going to get there. So that's how she
Awesome.
does it on a
Awesome.
boat, on a sailing ship.
That's so cool. And so let's talk. One of the things that I think about magic systems is there's always positives and negatives to magic systems.
Yes.
So if you use some magic, let's say you get
What's the
tired
cost?
or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you use your magic system in your books to create a complexity that
Mhm.
suits your characters?
So the way my magic system works is most magic comes from the blood of the gods. So either you have it somewhere in your lineage and it kind of comes to you. If you don't, then the gods have written runes that people can sort of tap in. So they have to write the runes, they have to have a talisman with the runes on it in order to tap into the power for the magic. That doesn't really cost them, but there's another source, and I call it their anima or their life force. So they can tap into literally their living being to draw power and then do magic. Now, if you think of it kind of like exercise, if you're pushing your limits, you're going to fall asleep, right? Magic, and when drawn from that source, is very similar. Like it will exhaust you to the point where you will collapse. And the more you draw, you can essentially kill yourself if you draw too much from your own life force to use the power and the magic. But there's another one. So of course, like with your physical body, your anima, there's a limit, right? You're still just a person. But there's another more powerful one, which is kind of like, you don't touch that one because that's the anima, that's the mind. So when you start feeling that magic with your emotions, it can become more powerful, but you can risk losing your mind and quite literally go insane because you've now drawn on so much emotion and that emotional power behind the magic. So those are kind of my two power sources.
That's awesome. That's great. I love it. I love your explanation. So let's talk about your current project.
Mhm,
I know that you were working not only on a Kickstarter. So let's
mhm.
talk about your Kickstarter to let everybody know about your Kickstarter. And then let's talk about what your current project is that your work in progress.
Yeah. So I like making pretty books. I love, like I said, I have so much art with my novels that I
Okay,
like.
show it because I
Yeah,
really like
yeah.
that. Yeah, that funky.
So that's my, so I only have Starfound here. I don't actually have Star Awakened yet because that one's not edited yet. But it's going to be like a really shiny gold foil edition and with like a dust jacket. And uh, try not to do that.
Yeah,
And then, so, because yeah, I like shiny. So that's going to be the naked cover. And then inside, I've drawn like illustrations for the end papers, um, like that. And then inside the book itself, I have actually, well, this one has 13 illustrations, but I won't pull all of them out. So,
and
like,
we
there's,
need to make sure that people understand these are yours.
yeah, this is my art. Like, I drew all of these
This
pictures.
isn't something that she bought. This is something that she did.
Yeah,
Like,
so I
look at that talent. How
yeah,
cool is that?
so it's like my books do get quite dark and cover themes of torture. So, but
Well, the world was pretty bloody back in the day.
well,
You
and
know,
I that's kind of what I picture is that okay, well, what did they have to survive? And if you think of because the medieval ages, of course, fantasy is heavily inspired by medieval ages, and I remember going to like wax museums and stuff, and
don't show
liking
them all. Show them that little
yeah
creature that you showed me. I want
the
to. I want everybody to see your little creature.
the
I don't
little
know what it's
homunculus.
called. What is it? Called something?
Well, it's a homunculus. Um, that one.
I like that one, but there was one that was on a square, like your little funky one.
Oh, like that's my derpy dragons.
Yeah, that
Ah,
one. I think that
yeah,
one.
like this one.
That one.
Yeah.
Fun.
So this is my derpy dragon. I just made a bunch of pins. It was a pin campaign actually that finished, and this one's quote is actually I'm using it as a shirt. It says, "You say weird like it's a bad thing," and because that's kind of how I see myself. Is I've
Well,
just
yeah,
kind of
because when you're a kid, people are like, "Oh, you're weird. I don't want to."
yeah.
But hey, we're all geeks in a way.
Oh, 100% a geek.
We're
Yeah.
yeah, we all
So
belong somewhere. And
Oh,
we
it's so nice. Yeah.
and weird isn't a bad thing. So
No,
it's really
no.
cool.
And, just finding your own unique weird and embracing it. And I really like skulls. So I like skulls and dragons. So that's like in my art itself,
And you
you'll
like
see a lot.
purple.
I love purple. It's my favorite color. That
Yeah.
and black.
So if you think you're weird, hey, you belong. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I love that because we all belong
Oh,
in our weird
absolutely.
way, in our
Yeah.
authentic way.
Yeah. You
Uh,
just got to find your weird tribe.
yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah. No, I love it. It's
Yeah,
like
I
I found
like
my
that.
weird tribe actually through crowdfunding is where I found most of my fellow weirdlings, I call them. But, just people that resonate with me, my art, and my own kind of brand of weirdness.
Yeah, so if you think you're weird, join the weirdlings.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, for
one of your
sure.
new words, weirdlings.
It is actually. I used it in my Derpy Dragon campaign when I made that thing, and it was like people just. I actually made a sticker for all my backers, like Weirdling Tribe,
Yeah,
and
so
I
if
have
you
a
want to
little.
be a weirdling, guess where? Oh, I don't know where you are on my screen. So join that. So what else haven't I asked that you think is really important for people to know about you?
Um, hmm, important about me. I don't know. Like I think I've said pretty much everything. I like making art, especially dragons, fantasy art. I love doing character art, and I like exploring like deeper things in both my art and my books. So like I'm doing a dark art book coming up next year, and it's like the first time I'm actually making art for me instead of art that I feel that I've, always had to make for what people expect art should be. So I'm really excited about that one. But then I've also made like my dragon art book, which I absolutely love because drawing dragons is like stress relief and dragons are awesome. Um,
So I'm gonna put you on the spot
yeah.
because authors and creatives always have this. You just brought it out where sometimes we feel like we're writing safe or we're
Hmm.
creating safe because we think, oh, I can't do this, or what are my parents gonna think, or
Yeah.
what is my partner gonna think, or
Yeah.
maybe I don't know about this. We always have that little voice in our head. And then we go ahead and push the boundaries and find out that, hey, we're part of the Weirdling group. And
Yeah.
there's people out there that really like it. So how, what was that journey like for you? That discovery process that says, I'm okay. I'm going to be strong and I'm going to put myself out here because it's not
Yeah.
easy being an
No.
author or an artist or a singer or I mean, I actress,
Yeah.
anything when you're putting yourself out there is not easy because the critics are brutal.
Yeah.
So how did you find the strength to settle into this world of yours?
So it's actually kind of new, even though my journey to get here has been long. So I think like most artists, I was told, go get a degree, but you're not allowed to do art. Like no one should be an artist, right? That's like not a no-no. And so I did. I got my science degree, kinesiology, and then eventually, when my 30s, I was forced in a position where I could either pursue that or I could follow my heart and do a creative career. So I told my family I'm going to be a professional photographer. At this time, I couldn't even take proper photos. I had the vision, but I didn't have the technical know-how. And the stubbornness just kind of kicked in of teaching myself to become up to an award-winning photographer. And, eventually but that was the first step in the creative journey of, yes, I'm an artist and yes, I'm going to be an artist. But even, in the beginning, you're copying people in the sense that you're trying to learn technique and how did they achieve it. And it wasn't actually until probably 2020 when I really discovered, okay, well, I'm not really a light and airy photographer, but I'm more of a dark. I like the dark. I like the dark dramatic lighting. I like if you look at my photography, it's really rich, heavy, deep colors. And that actually then translated into my illustrations and even my books is going from that. I'm like, this is who I am as an artist. I'm not glamour. I'm not, frilly and fancy and sparkly. And, but that's okay. And so I think in 2020, I finally started really realizing that, but it wasn't until, well, probably, I would say even like 2022, when I finally just said, you know what, I like these things and I'm okay with me. Like when I turned 40, maybe there's a milestone when you hit 40, right? And I'm just like, you know what? I like dark art and I like skulls and I like dragons and I'm okay with that. And it's okay for me to have, a room dedicated to fantasy and art and dragons. And it's okay for me to do this kind of art because if I don't, who will? Right? So I don't know, for me, art is definitely a calling. It's something that you can't stop. You can try, you'd be frustrated for a day and be like, stop for one day, but you will always go back, no matter how frustrating or how hard the journey is. And I feel like discovering your true voice is just one of those things that, yes, it will be frustrating and yes, it's going to be, emotionally painful, but eventually you will find it and you'll learn to embrace it. Because I don't know, like when I really started embracing who I am, I started finding that people actually would come to my art more, right? Because now I wasn't just copying. I was true to my authentic self and I was true to who I am as an artist and my voice and that I'm giving into the world. So I
It's
don't know if
so
that answers.
amazing that you said 40 because I too was very much 40, I think, is a magical age because my
Yeah,
husband asked me, what's not on your bucket list that you're too afraid to put on it? And at
yeah,
the time, I mean, my epic fantasy has been in my head since I was 8.
yeah,
But I'm dyslexic and I had this belief in my head that I couldn't write,
yeah,
you know, and now I'm award winning and, I think I have
yeah,
70, 80,000 books in distribution and, and it's just like, huh, who
that's
knew,
wonderful.
you know?
Yeah,
So if anybody's listening, listen to both of
yeah,
us about,
yeah,
hey, maybe you can start earlier than 40. But, it's hard, it's hard to become that authentic self because there's
yeah.
so much pressure.
Hmm.
Do you agree with that or am
Oh, definitely. Like my parents are very conservative. They like even in my own family, I'm the black sheep and the outcast. So never mind, being an immigrant. But I don't know, my like just even me writing about angels and demons probably would freak out my mom. She doesn't like that, right? Because I'm challenging beliefs and I'm challenging status quo of what we were raised as. So still took me a long time to get to the point where I was comfortable to even say, yeah, this is a book I'm going to publish first. And my dad has read it, my mom has not. But I think when I turned 40, I realized that just I can't I have to stop making art for my mom. I have to stop seeking that approval because it's making me unhappy and it's not who I am. And you know what? It's okay to be me. It's okay to not be a girly girl and the frillies and the sparkles. It's okay to like dark things. It's okay to like dragons and fights. And, I love romance as well because, my books do have romance in it, but it's okay. But once you realize that you can, I guess, once you give yourself permission to be yourself and, realize that, okay, maybe they will stop loving me. They probably won't, but there's that fear of, okay, well, if I do this and follow my heart, they're going to stop loving me, right? Or I'm not going to be good enough or worth it as a daughter or, but once you realize that, no, it's okay to just be yourself, then they'll come to accept that because their opinion will no longer matter.
well, and I think that's important. I think that, as I'm much older than you are, but one of my friends gave me a measuring tape that measures out and says, how long do you think you're going to live? And I'm like, I've got this much room left on my measuring tape. And
Yeah.
you get to a point where it's like,
Yeah.
it's mine,
Yeah.
it's mine that I need to do what this is. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I think I'm, don't wait Until you're 40, people. Don't
No,
wait. Do
I'm so
it. Do it
envious of
now.
people who start young.
Yeah, do it. Find your
Yeah,
why. You know, we've talked a
yeah,
lot about finding your why and
yeah,
find why what your message is in the world and go after it and go do it
yeah,
and just live it every day. So
yeah.
anymore. So let's talk about where we can find more about you. Where are you at? Where are you hanging out? And how do people get in touch with you and your books and your art and all that stuff? Good stuff.
So probably to find all my books and my art and stuff, my website, which is, do you want me to say it?
Yeah.
It's
Well, spell
www.
it out. Yep, spell
Okay,
it out.
yeah. It's www.therena.art. So my name, Therena.art. And from there, you can find my newsletter. So actually, I write a weekly newsletter where you get my, every week you will get one of my art pieces and usually what's going on in my world of crowdfunding or whatever books are released. And then also I'm on Patreon. So I took off all my art on social media because of AI scraping, but I share everything now on Patreon. So I do have some free tiers. So it's the same thing, patreon.com/THERENA, just my name. So that's where you can you can see all my art there instead. I'm also on Kara app, which is a new artist app. Same thing, just my first name /THERENA.
Can you spell Cara, the app?
As yeah, CARA. So CARA.app/THERENA.
Awesome. So there you go. So is there anything else that we didn't cover? I think we did a great job, covering most of your stuff, where you're from
Yeah,
and your journey and your stories and your characters and your world building. I think it's fascinating. You are an amazing lady. I just have to say that. So
well, thank you
amazing
very
lady.
much.
So anyway, so I guess maybe we'll just end it here
Yeah,
and we'll say goodbye to everybody who's watching and wishing you all the best that the day has to offer, and be bold and brave and strong and go and do your thing. So anyway,
yeah.
so anyway,
Well,
goodbye everyone.